Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series on the life divine with our beloved Ranga. We are still in the supermind, mind, and the overmind, Maya. And on page 290 at the bottom, beginning with, but once this entry into the inner being is accomplished.
So before we read that para, a little reference so that we situate the para that we're going to read, we'll understand exactly what the context is. He has told you first to begin with that the mind and the higher hemisphere, the spiritual planes of consciousness above the mind, are so different that they seem to be almost opposites. And it's very difficult for the normal man to access these higher planes. But there are certain indications that show that it is possible. And he has listed 4 things by which you can do that. The first is the impersonal, right?
Mm-hmm.
The impersonal experience of the impersonal, number 1. Number 2, the experience of the intuition. Sometimes you get intuition, it's coming from higher planes of consciousness, enters into your mind. The third is
was it genius?
Huh?
Was it the
genius?
Genius.
The third is the genius. The phenomena of genius shows that he has access to the spiritual planes of consciousness. And the last is spiritual experience itself. So it is possible. So he is examining now how it is possible to go into these higher planes. In the previous paragraph, he has told you that there are 2 ways of accessing the cosmic consciousness. One is to go horizontally into yourself. That's the first movement. You go into your intraconscient, crossing the barriers of the body, the vital and the mind, and you go deep inside yourself. You have the cosmic consciousness, but it is horizontal. It's not vertical. Okay? And the difference between the horizontal consciousness and the vertical cosmic consciousness is this, that the errors are possible in the intraconscient, but errors become much less when you go up. It's not that you don't have errors. Errors can still be there, but they are much reduced.
So when you go into the intraconscient, when do you touch the psychic being?
You have to go beyond the inner mind, inner vital and inner...
Right.
You have to go beyond the inner vital, the inner physical, the inner vital and the inner mind. These planes also are there, and they are far superior to the outer mind, outer vital and the outer physical. But you have to cross those also and go deep into yourself.
But they are error prone, you're saying? The entry into the intraconscient can be error prone? You mentioned the word error.
It can have errors.
Yeah.
It can have
no,
errors.
you mean the entry itself can be error prone?
No, I mean to say the experience or whatever.
Oh, the experience is not that easy. You have to concentrate in the heart, or he has told you that you can develop your capacities, or if nature has given you the gift, it can be automatic. He has told you all that in the previous para.
But Ranganath, you mentioned the word error with respect to the...
Error means the knowledge that is available in the intraconscient, okay? Because you are in the cosmic consciousness, any knowledge that you want is available to you, you have to only focus. When you focus, you can get. But it is not absolute truth. There can be error. It's very if I give you an example, you know. I go into my intraconscient, which happens with hypnosis. I want to know what your past life was, not mine. I want to know yours. Okay? I go into my intraconscient, focus on you, and I will be led there. But there can be elements of error, depending on how my inner being is receiving the things. As I told you last time, it's very interesting. I find it also very interesting. These spiritual planes of consciousness have reflections in the physical world. Everything in the physical world is a symbol of the higher planes of consciousness. And now the intraconscious is symbolized in the physical world by the internet. That's exactly what you're doing. You go there and all the information you want is available, provided it is posted by somebody. But in the intraconscious, automatically nature and evolution is posting everything that happens. That's the only difference.
And where do the Akashic planes lie?
Above.
Above.
Not inside here.
Not inside. Yes.
Usually they are above.
And you said that from the top down, there is no error usually, or less error than going through the
No, there can be error.
There can be error.
Yeah,
also.
even apart from intuition, there can be error. Error, or it depends on how you are receiving. And the very good example of that is Ramdo's correction of Savitri and other things. He is receiving on top, but when he is revising, the presence improves, he revises extensively. And so someone asked him, he said that, they asked him that, how is it you are correcting? It's supposed to have come from above. He said the correction also is coming from above.
And he also said, as I rise to a higher and higher plane,
that is there.
it comes down.
Yes, that is there. He used Savitri as a field of experiment. Every time he was rising to another plane, he rewrote Savitri. The first canto, at least.
Yes, the first canto especially.
50 times he did that. 50.
Really?
And all the...
I had heard
all
16.
No!
50.
50. Wow. And they are all there in the archives.
My God.
He was experimenting to see how the higher planes of consciousness will affect the physical world. What will be the result here? Okay, so in the previous para, he has discussed the entry into the inner being. Okay, we discussed that in quite detail last time. Now we are going to read the next para. And he has said quite a few things there. It is a very interesting discussion. So what I'll do, I'll just read out summary of what he has said previously so that the connection is very clear. Okay. There are two doors of entry into the secret superior grades of our consciousness. Two doors of entry. The first is the entry into the subliminal through the heart center. We have to break the wall that separates our inner being from the surface nature of body, life and mind. This can be done by a gradual effort, number one, or a sudden transition, number two, or yet again a forceful involuntary breakup. Without your wanting, you can go in. That also is possible. Okay?
This has happened to people who were not necessarily yogas,
yes,
but they
hit
their head or something like
yes,
that, and they open.
And then normally it disturbs their balance of psychological balance, and they are not normal after that. Very often it happens. But if there is a background and you have, and Srimdeva said also that you can train yourself for it. Okay? So then he says, in this subliminal being, we find a true mind, a true vital, and a true physical, which may be called the subtle physical. The true physical is the subtle physical. This inner being is much larger, much more powerful, and more open to a vast knowledge and force than our surface outer waking being. The intraconscient is in contact with the cosmic consciousness and the cosmic forces. It can not only receive but also manipulate effectively these forces, beings and objects in the cosmos. You can even manipulate objects and beings. So there is an experiment. He is seeing somebody coming in the road and he says, I want him now to go left. And then you would watch. A harmless imposition of will. He used to do that first with animals and birds and crows. And then later on with human beings. And then with events in the physical world.
I had not heard this before.
Oh, no?
No.
Yeah. Last time we discussed,
record of yoga? That's where I did.
He intervened in the Sinn Féin movement in Ireland.
Yes.
He also influenced the Turkey. In Turkey, Turkey was a Pakka Muslim country. Khalif was the chief, and Kemal Ataturk, he worked on him, and it became a modern democratic republic, and he threw out all the Shariat laws. They're slowly coming back to that, but that's another matter.
I never heard about the birds and animals. That was.
Oh yes,
And that's in the record of yoga also.
Particularly, he used to see a crow sitting on the parapet there, on the terrace. He would will it to go and sit on the branch of that tree. And in the beginning, the power was not so effective. So it would fly somewhere else, and later on it would go and sit there.
Only in the record of yoga. I'm saying, as far as I know, it's only in the record of yoga.
Yes, nowhere else.
Yeah, I have not read it yet.
Yeah, it's there in the record of yoga. Okay, so you can, if you are there, you can not only receive knowledge, but you can also manipulate effectively these forces, beings and objects in the cosmos. In fact, the individual being can widen itself into a complete cosmic consciousness. Yet, the entry into the subliminal yields only a diminished truth and also a cosmic ignorance. This is what he said in the previous para. Now we'll read the next para.
Okay, but you say, here Sri Aurobindo is saying subliminal. Is it synonymous with intraconscious?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, the word subliminal means below the surface. But he says, I'll use that word, but it's not really below the surface, it's below the waking surface, or rather, behind the waking surface. Below the waking surface would be the subconscious and the inconscient. But he says, we'll use that word subliminal.
Ranganath, you said inner physical or subtle physical?
Inner physical?
Or subtle physical?
Yes.
But Mother says subtle physical is the true physical.
Yes.
But the true physical is not the inner physical, that is the inmost physical. We read in the letters. There is the inner physical and then there is the inmost physical.
Well,
No, there is a clear distinction.
maybe.
It's only for the inmost mental, vital and physical that he uses the adjective true. For the inner mental, vital and physical, he does not use the adjective true. That's what I remember.
No, I think he uses three words. The true mind, the inner mind, and he also uses the mental Purusha. That also he uses.
I think the mental Purusha is the inmost mind and that is the true mind.
If there is a gradation, then there also there could be a gradation. So inmost mind, maybe you could say that. So, now, the entry into the horizontal entry into yourself. But once this entry into the inner being is accomplished, the inner self is found to be capable of an opening, an ascent upwards into things beyond our present mental level. That is the second spiritual possibility in us. The first, most ordinary result is a discovery of a vast, static, silent self, which we feel to be our real or our basic existence, the foundation of all else that we are. There may be even an extinction, a nirvana, both of our active being and of the sense of self, into a reality that is indefinable and inexpressible. But also, we can realize that this self is not only our own spiritual being, but the true self of all others. It presents itself then as the underlying truth of cosmic existence. It is possible to remain in a nirvana of all individuality, to stop at a static realization or regarding the cosmic movement as a superficial play or illusion imposed on the silent self, to pass into some supreme, immobile and immutable status beyond the universe. But another less negative line of supernormal experience also offers itself. Therefore, there takes place a large dynamic descent of light, knowledge, power, bliss, or other supernormal energies into our self of silence, and we can ascend too into higher regions of the spirit where its immobile status is the foundation of those great and luminous energies. It is evident in either case that we have risen beyond the mind of ignorance into a spiritual state. But in the dynamic movement, the resultant greater action of consciousness force may present itself either simply as a pure spiritual dynamis, not otherwise determinate in its character, or it may reveal a spiritual mind range where mind is no longer ignorant of the reality. Not yet a supermind level, but deriving from the supermental truth consciousness and still luminous with something of its knowledge. That's the overmind. What he's talking about the last is the overmind. Okay, so we go back to each sentence because there are some things which are very interesting which we have to see. But once this entry into the inner being is accomplished, the inner self is found to be capable of an opening, an ascent upwards into things beyond our present mental level. That is the second spiritual possibility in us. So what he's saying is, if we have to go directly up, it's somewhat difficult. But if you have gone into yourself, then there is a possibility it's easier to rise up. That's what he seems to be saying. Okay, so is capable of an opening, an ascent upwards into things beyond our present level consciousness. This ascent and descent, we must be clear. Who is ascending? The consciousness is ascending. The body-mind life remains where it is. Okay, we must be very, very clear on that.
But the consciousness is ascending in what way? Through the head, through the heart, or straight up?
No, straight up.
Straight up.
It is leaving the body-mind life.
Right.
It's like you go out of a house. You are leaving the house. The house is the body-mind life. The soul is going out. Up.
And he says this is maybe an easier way.
The intraconscious and then go up.
Yes.
That's right. That's what he's saying. Okay. You can also use another image of going up. You can say that from the ground floor, you have gone to the first floor, second floor, third floor. Okay. So ascent in that way. That is the second spiritual possibility in us. The first is the intraconscious. The second is going into the intraconscious and going up. Of course, you can go up straight also without going through the intraconscious.
Got it.
That's what Subliminal did. Made his mind silent and went up. The first, most ordinary result is, I forgot the word, is a discovery of a vast, static and silent self, which we feel to be our real or our basic existence, the foundation of all else that we are. So this is very clear. It is vast, it is static, it is silent. He is repeating the word self. That means there is no activity at all there. There is the experience of the self. The experience of the self, you can say Brahman consciousness, you can say Atman. The other day there was a discussion between Atman and Atman is the Brahman consciousness because it is universal and the true being.
But it is not yet the experience of a nirvana. He gets to that later.
Okay, we'll come to that.
Yes,
that's interesting.
Right. Yes,
okay?
very interesting.
So nirvana, when they use in a slightly different way, and that distinction we can make. Even the first also is nirvana, because nirvana, the Sanskrit word nirvana, nirva is to blow out, like you blow out a candle. The reality of the world is blown out. It becomes an illusion, just like images.
What is the dhatu of that?
Va. To blow. The wind is blowing. Okay?
Nirvana.
Acha, vata.
Vata, from there. Okay, so that also is nirvana. In fact, Subliminal had the experience of nirvana first. He says you can call it what you want, but you can experience it also as your real self. And what are its characteristics? There are no characteristics at all. It is silent. That means you are in a consciousness where you are not thinking, you are not acting, you are absolutely silent. You are in perfect inactivity, immutable. Okay, so
But it is a static self.
it's a static. It is static. The body-mind life is continuing. This is a very interesting thing. It goes on by its own. So what happens? It's a robot. Universal nature is making your mind, your vital and your body move. You are not doing anything. The idea that you are doing now is because of your ego. But when you rise, the ego has gone. So you see that the nature is making your body, mind, life move. This is very interesting because man has now created a robot.
Yes.
And the robot is exactly that. It's got a body, it's got a vital, it's got a mind. What's a robot? A robot is its body is steel and plastic. Its life is the battery, electric current.
Yes.
And what about its mind? It's a computer which is programmed.
Yes.
So,
No soul.
huh?
But no
No
soul.
soul. But this raises a very interesting question. I was just discussing the other day. How do we know? Because nature is creating bodies and the soul enters into the body. How can we be sure that nature, the soul will not enter into a robot? I don't know. It seems unlikely.
No. It requires a human body for that.
Eh?
The psychic being cannot come in a body less than a human body.
Has he said that
Animals
anyway?
also have no psychic being.
Eh?
Animals also have no psychic being.
They have the soul.
Soul everything has. Even tree has a soul.
Yeah.
But
The
psychic being
divine
is not
presence.
there in less than
Yeah.
human.
No, but let me tell you one thing. The psychic being need not enter into a body.
That is true. Mother says sometimes
There
it
are
does
human
not
beings
enter
without
into
a
the
psychic
end of the
being.
life.
Yes, yeah, very true. And Mother has pointed about
Yes.
that. Yes, she has pointed to that.
But it won't enter a robot. Psychic
No,
being won't enter a robot.
No, it will be. How do you know?
How do you
Because it
know?
requires human body. Psychic being is conscious. It knows.
Because I think like a robot is a programmed consciousness, no?
So is your mind. It is universal nature which is programming.
Yes.
Because there is no Hrid Guha in the robot for psychic being to dwell.
Look, I'll tell you. When you are a child, okay, you are hearing, you are seeing, you are smelling, and you are tasting also, you can taste. Does that newborn child understand this is my mother? Does he understand the language? No. How does he understand little later on? You have to program your mind.
But then that programming, it's like divine programming,
No, it is derived from nature.
derived from nature.
Yes, universal nature is doing it. Just like universal nature is making a tree grow. The tree is growing, you are also growing. But the tree grows, its growth is limited to only life. You have a mind and that also comes in, nature is doing it for you. But you think that you are doing everything because you have an ego. But in the self, there is no ego. The ego has disappeared. And so you see your body, mind, life acting like a robot.
There is an interesting story by Isaac Asimov. I believe it was Asimov. It's about an old man who has built this extraordinary robot. And he's at his last breath. And he's saying the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. And he passes away, and the robot continues the prayer.
Wow. In fact, robots now, what is called feedback, na? They learn.
Yes, they are
They
learning.
can learn.
Yes.
And that's what a human being does also. In fact, if you have seen articles and all that, man is really frightened of artificial intelligence.
Because it will take over humanity. Like they fear it will take over
Yes.
humans.
Yes.
Anmol.
And
Yes, Rangada, this second sentence of this paragraph, silent self, which we feel to be our basic existence, the foundation of all else that we are.
Yeah.
Is this the same as what is called silent Brahman?
Yes.
Okay. But he's saying the foundation of all that we are.
Yes.
Right? But in the Gita 14, last verse of 14th chapter, I just remember it says, I, the Purushottama, am the foundation of the silent Brahman.
Okay.
That means this foundation which we are talking about, this also has a foundation.
Yes.
Okay, but you have not come to that yet in the
Yes.
life.
Yeah.
That's right.
But Anmol,
In the foundation also there are gradations.
note that he does say all else
Yes.
that we
Yes,
are.
that is true. That is true.
Yeah.
Not
But
all.
what is that else then?
There's the question.
What is that else?
Is it only below or is it also above? If it is above, then your question is met. All else that we are is body, mind, life. Normally we would think. But what's the guarantee that it's not also the higher mind, illumined mind, intuitive mind?
Definitely, it is the foundation of that also.
Yes,
No doubt about it.
that's right.
But AI cannot have a soul.
Who?
AI, artificial intelligence, cannot have a soul.
No, it doesn't have a soul.
So, how can the psychic being manifest in an AI without the soul?
It won't.
Right?
It won't.
Valid question.
No, that raises another question. So when we say the word soul, so there is a soul in trees. There is a soul in animals, but they don't have a psychic being. My question is there a soul in something less than living life, less than trees?
Even in the stone, the divine presence is there.
Yes.
But it's not a soul.
The soul is a divine presence, which is this divine spark.
So can I say that the soul is synonymous with individuality?
No, there is universal soul also.
No, not individuality.
Okay.
Psychic being.
Like Krishna says in the Gita, among the mountains I am the Himalaya.
Yeah.
So what does it mean?
No, that is the highest in that sense, in a very loose manner.
But Himalaya doesn't have a soul of its own.
No. It says that I am the highest and the best possible things in everything.
Not that example. A better
Nice.
example came to my
It's
mind.
a very loose language.
I understood. Better example came this Arunachala in Tiruvannamalai. They say that the mountain is very powerful. I have myself experienced it. So does it mean that this Arunachala has a soul
There is a divine presence there.
Divine presence.
in the mountain?
He says that it's an embodiment of Shiva, he says. Ramana Maharshi says that. And he was attracted to that ever since he was a small child. When he first heard the name of Arunachala, he had goosebumps. Yeah. Okay, so we come back to the basic spiritual experience is either the psychic or the self. And what is the self? Your consciousness rises above the mind. You may also be able to see that you are outside your body-mind life. That you are outside your body-mind life. And you are not doing anything. It is nature which is there. It is at that time that you realize that you are not the doer of actions. You are the non-doer. So who is the doer? Universal nature. Universal nature is motivating your mind, your vital and your body. Okay? So that's what you see. But now there is an interesting thing. When you enter there, you are in the cosmic consciousness. What's the cosmic consciousness? You are aware of everything. Okay? You are aware of everything. Like he examined the other, he gave an example that you can know other people's thoughts, you can know other people's feelings. Okay? You have identified yourself with everybody. Selectively. If you identify yourself with everybody, it will be a total confusion. So focusing is possible. The possibility is there and you focus. Okay? Then you know. Okay? So, but in the cosmic consciousness, there is an awareness of I am in the cosmic consciousness. Nirvana, the last nirvana would be even that I am conscious of, that also disappears. So that's what you are talking about nirvana. Nirvana means even that individuality disappears. Okay, so now that's what he's actually explaining also here.
But this next line is very interesting.
Yeah, there may be even an extinction. Okay, in nirvana, both of our active being and of the sense of self into a reality that is indefinable and inexpressible. By the way, he has not expressed that here, but if you make your mind silent and go up into the higher mind, there are three possibilities. He says that in the Life Divine. Okay? He says that you enter into a consciousness which is static and the world becomes unreal for you. But if you enter into the cosmic consciousness, okay, when you are in the self, it need not be cosmic consciousness. But if you are in the cosmic consciousness, the world is not unreal. The world is real. And there can be a third possibility which happened to Sri Aurobindo. He saw the physical world as unreal, only images, like photographs, no reality. But he didn't jump to conclusion that the world is unreal. He waited patiently,
Yes.
and then he says later on that's what he says, that another thing can happen. Light, power, consciousness can descend into you. That's what he will say a little later on. We'll read that now. Okay? So,
And regarding the part where he saw the physical world as mere images, does he not say in one letter that if I would have stopped at the same thing, I would have come to the same conclusion as Shankaracharya?
he doesn't say that.
Doesn't say that.
I don't think so.
I remember reading something like that.
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
Because he waited. That was the third
No,
one.
that's what I'm saying. He waited. I'm saying if that wait would not have fructified into the descent of this higher thing, and if he would have got stuck at the same thing, he would have come to the same conclusion as
Okay,
Shankara.
I don't think so. I'll tell you why. Because you are seeing the physical world as absolutely real. Okay? The screen is real. Narad sitting by me is real. You are asking questions real. I go into the consciousness of the self and all this becomes images. So what is God doing to me? Is he cheating me? I can't believe that. That was his attitude. So there must be something, it's a in-between stage. So I'll wait. That was his the way he looked at it.
But this next sentence needs a lot of explanation. Please,
Okay, let's
please.
see that.
This
Okay.
is so beautiful.
Yeah. So this is indefinable in itself. But also we can realize that this self is not only our own spiritual being, but the true self of all others. In other words, this self which is infinite, eternal, is your true being. That's what you really are, essentially. But it's also the self of others. There is a universal self and an individual self into whom you have gone, but your individuality has merged into the infinite. That's what he's saying. And when it merges into the infinite, it can also disappear. That's what the Buddhist aim and the Mayavada aim. But Sri Aurobindo says, don't lose your individuality. You need not extinguish your individuality. Become cosmic. Retain your individuality and even come down to the physical with that reality. That's his whole idea. Don't go to the extreme extinction. Realize the self, realize the true individual, and come down to the physical world.
Like, I remember reading a correspondence where people were wanting to identify with Mother and Sri Aurobindo and become like them. But Sri Aurobindo points out, like, why become like us and not realize your own divinity
Yes.
in your own unique way?
Yes, that is because the divine is not only one. That is an interesting thing we have to understand. All divine creatures will not be same. Otherwise, it will be a damn monotonous thing. So, there can be a great difference. Each one has got his own individuality and his own nature, which he calls Swadharma and Swabhava and Swadharma. Each one is different. Very clear. Look at Mother. She is into music and painting. And Sri Aurobindo also is divine.
Tennis also.
He is into literature. So, totally different. So, in fact, that also question is discussed in the last chapter, that it is not a monotonous oneness which has no distinctions. The divine life is, the supermind is oneness but full of multiplicity also. Infinite possibilities.
And that was always the joke in the West. why should I go to a heaven where angels are singing every day? And everyone is in the same consciousness.
It is not the same consciousness.
No.
Essentially, it is the same, but it manifests itself in different ways. Okay, so, but also we can realize that this self is not only our own spiritual being, but the true self of all others. In fact, that's your cosmic consciousness. Otherwise, how will you be able to understand other people's thoughts and other people's, because it's become one. Okay, so it presents itself then as the underlying truth of cosmic existence. Okay? When you go to the nirvana consciousness, the self, which you can call the Atman, you can call it the Brahman, okay? Then that is your true being. It is infinite and eternal, but featureless. And that which is featureless gives all the features in the physical world. That's why it's the underlying foundation. It's like the water behind the dam. The water behind the dam is the foundation of all the rivers that come out. So that's what he says. Then he's saying, the next one, it is possible to remain in a nirvana of all individuality. When he's using the word nirvana here means a rejection of, okay, a annulment of all individuality. To stop at a static realization or regarding the cosmic movement as a superficial play or illusion imposed on the silent self, to pass into some supreme, immobile and immutable status beyond the universe. You completely eliminate your individuality. That's what he's saying. Okay? Is that the one you were wanting? Explain the next one.
It was the true self in all others. That's such an interesting line there.
Your true self is the self of all others. It's the same and yet. It's like the waves in the sea. You are a wave in the sea, but the sea is the constituent of all the waves. So when you are a wave, you are concentrating only on your own form and your own movement. But when you become conscious of the sea, you realize that all the other waves also are part of the sea.
And Sri Aurobindo says not to change your sense of yourself.
Yeah. You have to retain that. That's exactly what Nili was saying just now.
Yes.
Why do you want to be like me? Be like yourself. Yeah. Okay. So, it's clear, na? So, the spiritual being, the true self of all others. It is possible to remain in a nirvana of all individuality, to stop at a static realization or regarding the cosmic movement. The word regarding means looking at. Okay? It's like the French word. Not regarding means regarding this matter is not to be taken in that way.
Yes.
Regard means looking at, okay? Regarding the cosmic consciousness as a superficial play or illusion imposed on the silent self, to pass into some supreme, immobile and immutable status beyond the universe. Beyond the universe, transcendent. But another less negative line of supernormal experience also offers itself. That's why Sri Aurobindo says the experience of the self is somewhat negative. Negative means you have attained peace and calm and quiet. But what about Ananda and what about power? It is devoid of Ananda and power. So that he says positive.
Knowledge also. In peace and calm and quiet, there may not be necessarily any knowledge. No light, no knowledge, I am saying.
Yeah, it's a negation of all that you thought was real. That's all. So that he calls it a negative. So simply saying there can be a less negative line of supernormal experience also offers itself. For there takes place a large dynamic descent of light, knowledge, power, bliss or other supernormal energies into our self of silence. So that which was silent now receives and becomes full of all these things. It's an emptiness, but the emptiness is one of freedom. So you feel very satisfied. Okay? But it has to fill up with, there is no power and there may not be any ananda. There can be a little bit of Ananda. In Sri Aurobindo's case, there is no Ananda at all. No emotion, no Ananda. He says there is absolutely no emotion at all. Only a deep sense of freedom. Okay. But another less negative line of supernormal experience also offers itself, for there takes place a large dynamic descent. Now note the word dynamic. In other words, it can change your mental thinking, it can change your vital emotions, it can change also your body. Dynamic. It's not passive. Dynamic energy into our self of silence. And we can ascend into higher regions of the spirit, where its immobile status is the foundation of those great and luminous energies. So, it's like the higher mind, illumined mind, intuitive mind, overmind are the second floor, third floor, fourth floor, fifth floor, or whatever you want. So, you can go there. And the view will be different, the air will be purer, everything will be different. So that's what he's saying. So there is an ascent and a descent.
If you had to make a comment, you would say that Savitri was from the overmind, mostly?
Minimum standard was the overmind.
Wow.
Earlier it was not like that. Earlier it was higher mind, illumined mind.
Yes.
But he fixed the overmind as a minimum. That's why he took up Savitri towards after his 1926.
And Life Divine?
Life Divine also he revised. In 1940s, he revised Life Divine. He didn't revise Synthesis.
You would say overmind in Life Divine also?
See, these are very difficult for us to say. How can we say all these things?
Regarding Savitri, he said, I have tried to over-mentalize it thoroughly.
Yes.
I have tried to give it overall an over-mental tone.
Yes.
Something like that, he said.
Yes.
But certainly there have been touches of the supermind also. There.
Ah.
Certainly.
Ranganath, I have a doubt. When we say all this regarding speech, overmental and supramental, now supramental by definition is oneness, right? And speech by definition means cutting up your, simultaneously. So how can you have supramental speech? It sounds like an oxymoron.
You cannot.
You understand what I mean?
Supramental is not only oneness. It is the one and the many.
It's many with its basis as oneness.
Triple status.
Yes. Don't forget the triple status. The triple status of the supermind is there is in the first status only oneness. The sea is absolutely calm. No waves at all. In the second one, the waves are forming. The many are appearing. But each of the many, if you are experiencing that second status, you will realize that you are part of the sea. My individuality is less important than the sea. I am the sea, but I am beginning to individualize myself into a wave. The third status of our mind, the wave is more important than the sea. And in the overmind, the wave has almost forgotten that it is part of the sea. At least the identification disappears.
So you're saying that one of those waves can be the speech. So in the third step, the wave being speech, it can know that it is part of the one, and theoretically, therefore, we can have something called supramental speech.
What you're saying is very interesting. Can there be any speech there? Speech is limitation.
That's what I'm saying.
So, it's a knowledge without words that is coming
That's
down.
what I'm saying. And if it is without words, then how can we say that this line is supramental?
It gets transformed into words. It is somewhat similar to, just one second, it is somewhat similar to the plan that you have built, and it gets manifested into a house. The house is reflecting the plan. So the knowledge in the supermind, the words will reflect that knowledge.
Like the Vedas. I'm not saying that is supramental speech, but that is a form of speech which is in link with the...
It comes from there and turns into speech at the lower levels.
But then it is not distorting the Vedas, they are containing that power, right? So as we move, the speech will also be transformed, right? Like in the supramental evolution, the speech
will reflect the truth of the higher planes. The speech
will
reflect the truth of the higher planes, but it is limited. That is the reason why Srimad says in the Essays on the Gita, never take a single scripture in the world as the final truth. Because it is subject to limitation of language. He says our attitude towards the Gita will be, yes, it is a great scripture. But we will not limit ourselves to anything.
Like mother also, like when she is in her writings, when she's explaining, she's constantly saying it's so difficult to describe it, like the experience, the words cannot.
There are no words there. There are no words, there is only sight or identification. The instruments change altogether.
There are one more question. Since she mentioned the Rig Veda and we are having this discussion of the level of poetry, one of the rigs says, Richo Akshare Parame Vyoman, that these rigs, they reside in the supreme ether. So what is that supreme ether? Is it overmind? Is it supermind? What is it?
The highest level is that.
And actually that doesn't, what I want to know is that are the writings of Sri Aurobindo, just we can take it blindly by default that they're higher than the Rig Vedic writings in terms of consciousness? Savitri, for example, is it higher than the Rig Veda?
These are comparisons which I would say are not valid.
Achha, not valid.
Interesting.
You can't compare these things like that.
I'm sorry, but why?
Huh?
Why can't we compare?
First of all, we don't know from where Srimad. So it's very difficult. Even if you can see a comparison, see, look, who is greater, Shakespeare or Goethe? So Srimad says you can't compare.
That's why he gives 3 levels. And he puts 3 of them on one level and 3 of them on another level and Goethe on the 3rd level. But he says they're all the same. So he doesn't qualify those 3 levels.
This game of comparison is a damn dangerous thing.
Yes, yes.
No, but for it, okay, I don't know, I'll say this and stop. So in the Isha Upanishad, they speak of the golden lid. So that golden lid is basically the barrier between the overmind and the supermind.
Yes.
Which means that they have not crossed that barrier. And if they have not crossed that barrier, then their speech will be at highest, it will be overmental, no? Whereas Sri Aurobindo's is theoretically, could be higher even than overmind. Because he crossed that barrier.
Yeah, but why do you say that the Rig Veda...
no, that's what they're saying. Now they're praying for that lid to be removed. The fact that they're praying means the lid has not been
That's
removed.
only in the Isha Upanishad.
Okay.
But in the Rig Veda, they speak of truth consciousness. Rita Chit, Satyam Ritam Brihat. They are speaking of that. You can't say that the Rig Veda is below or limited to the overmind. You can't say that. We don't know. Just like now all doctors are agreeing that we know very little of the body functioning. So similarly, these things, and we have not even spiritual experience. All this mental knowledge, what we are discussing, which is the most superficial. Okay, so he's saying that there can be an ascent and a descent. The ascent is your soul or your consciousness, which is the soul, goes up into the higher regions, leaving the house of body, mind, life alone. That is possible. But the other possibility is the light that is there above can penetrate into you. The power that is above can penetrate into you. Just like a flood, the water would go into your house, or the windows you open and the light comes in. So that is a descent. So that will, in fact, in Srimada's yoga, he wants a descent into your body, mind, life. Okay? So, and what descends? He is telling you very clearly. He is telling you great and luminous energies. It is evident. Now here it is. Light, knowledge, power, bliss, or other supernormal energies. What are the other supernormal energies? One is very clearly Ananda, he is not mentioning. So Ananda is definitely other supernormal energies. Okay, so all sorts of powers can come. Oh, he's mentioning bliss, sorry.
Yes, he said bliss.
He's saying bliss.
So basically,
Okay,
synonymous.
Yeah. Okay. There can be so many things. Intuition, discrimination, all sorts of things can come. Okay, I go to the next sentence. It is evident in either case that we have risen beyond the mind of ignorance into a spiritual state. But in the dynamic movement, the resultant greater action of consciousness force may present itself either simply as a pure spiritual dynamis, not otherwise determinate in its character, or it may reveal a spiritual mind range where mind is no longer ignorant of the reality. Not yet a supermind level, but deriving from the supramental truth consciousness and still luminous with something of its knowledge. He's saying you could go right up to the overmind level. That last sentence is very clear, overmind level. He could rise right up to that level. He's using the word spiritual dynamis. Yeah. In the normal higher mind, it is not dynamic. Normally, it is not dynamic. It is static.
Not otherwise determinate in its character.
Yeah. So, may present itself either simply as a pure spiritual dynamis, not otherwise determinate in its character, or may reveal a spiritual mind range where mind is no longer ignorant of the reality.
What does it mean by that? Not otherwise determinate in its character?
Where?
That's my question.
Yeah, Narad also asked.
Huh?
What does it mean? It's a very difficult sort of phrase.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand that. And what I can think is that in this overmind, power can be there at that level because he's saying spiritual dynamis. But that power may not actually translate into the physical world. From the overmind consciousness, you can transform your mind, you can transform your vital also, but you can't transform your body. I think that's what he's meaning. Not otherwise determinate.
I think here what his meaning is that it doesn't determine itself. And by determine, he means like you have to go to the root of that. So term means end. So it does not put any limits on itself. It remains what it is as a sort of potential energy. That's what I feel.
Not otherwise determinate in its character. General power is there. He says it's possible to go right up to the overmind where you get a spiritual dynamism, but it may not translate into, at the physical level it may not translate fully. Of course you have a lot of power when you go to even in the higher mind you can have power. But mild powers. In fact, we have the Ashtasiddhis. All normal yogis, they attend the Ashtasiddhis. The Anima, Garima, Lagima, Mahima, Prakamyam, Aishwaryam.
Question?
Initially, you said there are chances of error in horizontal process.
I didn't follow.
He's saying in the intra-conscient movement,
Yeah.
you said there is chance of error.
Yes.
So he wants to understand that.
Oh, the knowledge that you get may not be full. It can be part knowledge. Like all scientific knowledge is part true only, it's not fully true.
But what are the chances of error?
Error means you can make a mistake of judgment also.
That was supermind, everything is error proof.
But then that happens at the horizontal plane also, right? Error can happen.
You are saying vertical and saying horizontal. So what do you mean?
vertical plane. Vertical.
Yes, but much less.
This is the error.
Right. I always get
Pardon?
Shankara and Buddha, no, on Wednesday.
On Wednesday only.
Huh? Shankara?
No, she's saying vertically also there can be error. So I'm saying that Shankara and Buddha ascended vertically. But Sri Aurobindo said they both made a mistake. So obviously it is error prone also.
They didn't make a mistake.
No, Sri Aurobindo has said this. I can show you the letter. He says, Shankara, like Buddha, made a mistake. In shooting straight to this, the normal course of evolution would be this.
Well, mistake in the sense that he could have done something else.
Ranganath, there is no a sense there. It is very clear. He says they made a mistake.
Ranganath, please tell.
What is meant by mistake?
Exact. And
What is meant by mistake? He has.
Please
The
tell.
mistake is they were overleaping the normal stages of evolution and shooting straight to the absolute. He said the next normal step would have been the supermind.
Yeah.
Krishna was leading by the normal course of the evolution. Krishna opened overmind. The next thing to have been done would have been to open the supermind. That's what he means.
It's okay, but suppose they don't want to do. They want to go to the super. Where is the mistake?
That's the mistake, wanting to get out.
This is what I want to do and I have done it.
But according to Sri Aurobindo, that is a mistake.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes, I understood.
According to Sri Aurobindo, he could have done something. In fact, he says that in the Life Divine. He says Buddha considered the world to be unreal. Shankara considered the world not unreal, but imperfect. And if you want the divine, you have to go up. But why didn't he speak of the evolution and say that here also there is going to be a divine life? He could have gone one more step. He says that in the Life Divine. So in that sense, mistake according to what I am seeing. But it's not a mistake.
Namaste, all, and thank you for attending. We'll see you next week. Thank you, Ranga.
Now, Ranganath.